Folks, when Jeff Sessions was fired last week as Attorney General, well, he said he resigned, but yeah, he was fired. He did his best to screw everyday Americans and support police. Now, of course, we've covered his speeches here on Roland Unfiltered, where he pretty much said that cops, the morale was down because of consent decrees. Well, guess what he did? He left behind a memorandum sharply curtailing the use of consent decrees. Those decrees are court-enforced agreements to overhaul local police departments accused of abuses and civil rights violations. The memo means that the decrees used aggressively by the Obama-era Justice Department will be more difficult to get. Joining me right now, a couple of folks who are very familiar with this particular issue is Billy Murphy. Billy is an attorney out of Baltimore, one of the places where, of course, Sessions tried to get rid of a consent decree but got slapped down by a federal judge. But also Reddit Hudson, who leads a police accountability group out of St. Louis. And so, gentlemen, glad to have both of you. Reddit, I want to start with you. Jeff Sessions consistently hated these consent decrees, standing before a cop saying that he wanted to pull back because it was hurting their morale. He gave a speech in Chicago where he talked about how cops were slowing down their enforcement. In Baltimore, he literally tried to get rid of that consent decree, but the police department and the mayor said, wait a minute, we're in agreement with it. This is shameful what he did, leaving the DOJ after he got fired.
Jeff Sessions is who he is. He was a white supremacist. He is a white supremacist. Unfortunately, he was appointed to the highest position in law enforcement in our country, and he effectively sought to push a white supremacist agenda. He has a history of being anti-civil rights, and obviously he thought his most effective work could be done in the law enforcement arena, where he was pro-law enforcement and has left, as you said, a legacy now on his way out the door of positioning police departments to act with even more impunity than they have in the past. But unfortunately for him, I think the grassroots work that's been done around this country and the reform efforts that have been led by some in law enforcement, including many of my colleagues, will ultimately see us create the kind of reforms and accountability that we know should exist for police officers that violate our human rights, civil rights, and civil liberties.
Billy Murphy, first of all, this is what he actually did with this. First of all, instead of having career folks in DOJ make the decisions, he said that the political appointees will be making the decision when it comes to these consent decrees. Also, with these consent decrees, and with it, lawyers must lay out evidence of additional violations beyond unconstitutional behavior. What the hell is that? I mean, what additional evidence beyond them operating in an unconstitutional manner? And he's also putting a date, an end date on this that's not based upon when they actually get it done, but simply says at the outset, here's the end date. And so cops could simply slow this whole thing down.
Well, like Donald Trump, Jeff Sessions has been a racist all his life by exposure to unquestioned racism in his own family, in his community, in his politics, with his colleagues, etc. He's a dyed-in-the-wool white supremacist, it's just like the previous person speaking said. And Donald Trump appointed him, which means Donald Trump shares his white supremacy, and he got that honestly from his father. And we have to deal with these people harshly because they're a menace to our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness as African Americans in this society. And this is a policy based on color. He wants mass incarceration to continue, as does Donald Trump. They're both in denial about the nature and extent of it, as is the president has pointed out over and over. And so we have to resist. We have to do everything in our power to mobilize even stronger so that we can prevent this kind of racism. And that starts with what we have to do in the House of Representatives about the president. Clearly, this president should be impeached. We've never had a person in office as outrageous as he is, as evil as he is, as lacking in empathy as he does, and who really has shown over and over again that he has no concern for the life, liberty, and happiness of whites or blacks who happen to be middle class or below.
Reddit.
So that's what we've got to do.
Reddit is very interesting. Here we go to my computer here. This is what the New York Times wrote. Mr. Sessions conceded in his memo that consent decrees are sometimes the only way to ensure that government agencies follow the law. But he argued that changes were necessary because agreements that impose long-term, wide-ranging obligations on local governments could violate their sovereignty. I mean, talk about nonsensical. Your job is to protect. Your job is to protect citizens from abusive cops. Oh, this is going to somehow hurt their sovereignty. No, that is the point of the federal government saying that these are unconstitutional behavior. What the hell?
It's ridiculous on its face. What he's arguing is that it prevents them from abusing your rights further. You stop them from abusing your rights for too long a period of time, and that's not satisfactory for him. As Mr. Murphy said, our responsibility is to resist, and you're seeing that across the country. I'm sitting right now in the office of the St. Louis Circuit Attorney, Kim Gardner, who's one of the most progressive attorneys, DAs in the country right now, pushing for sentencing reform, alternative sentencing, and she's very clear and intentional about addressing the systemic issues that we see produced by policies that are promulgated by people like Jeff Sessions and his ilk. We can defeat that collectively, and we will.
Reddit, last question to you. Obviously, the Attorney General has lots of leeway, and so the only way this really gets changed if a Democrat is elected president and installs an Attorney General who can throw out this memorandum by Jeff Sessions.
Yeah, and I think we see the makings of an interesting race in 2020. I think in spite of the fact that given the Republicans' dedication to voter disenfranchisement, voter suppression, purging voter rolls, ridiculous gerrymandering, and every other way that they can use to deny us the right to vote, I think the 2020 race is shaping up as a referendum on Donald Trump, and he's failed miserably in his capacity as the leader of this nation. I think we'll see a change.
Billy Murphy, final comment.
This is something that is so terrifying to everybody who understands how the president thinks. Not only has he put a toady in as his new acting attorney general, but it looks like he has set a course where he's going to get rid of Mueller. He's going to get rid of Rosenstein. And if the Republicans cave to this, we will descend into lawlessness. It is a fortunate thing that we got the House. I wish we'd gotten the Senate, but the blue wave was real. And we need to take full advantage of this opportunity because we may not get another one before things like martial law will be declared and Donald Trump is completely ignoring the Constitution and the rights of all Americans. We could become a fascist country. Many people think that we're at the same stage when Hitler pretended to be a reformer who believed in democracy. Boy, did people learn that was a lie. Among the thousands of lies this president has told. We don't want any child in America to emulate this man's behavior. We don't want him as a role model for any child in America. He is a disgrace to this country.
All right, then. Billy Murphy, as well as Reddit Hudson. I certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.